Good morning. We were trying to get everybody settled before starting, but unfortunately we have a hard stop. And so it's in our interest to start as quickly as possible. So, my name is Zil Akarewe. I'll be facilitating the session today. I run a financial advisory firm called Graham Black Advisory. We focus on risk management using derivatives. So, just to set the tone for the discussion today, financing economic transformation. I think that I've been asked to do a very quick presentation. Thank you. So okay. For NESG, I'm a facilitator. I facilitate the Financial Markets and Financial Inclusion Policy Commission. Professionally, once a banker, you're always a banker. I spent most of my career, 15 years of my career in banking. I worked in Lagos, London, Lusaka. I left banking 10 years ago to run a financial advisory firm that I've already introduced. Now, one of the things that I think is very important for our session today, and I'll tell a story. I learned something a few years ago. It was one of the most amazing things I've come across. I came across two psychologists, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Has anybody heard of them? Two very prominent psychologists. They won the Nobel Prize. Now, what do you think two psychologists would have won the Nobel Prize in? Who would guess? Not you. You've heard of them. Not you. Who would guess? Guess what they won the Nobel Prize in? Economics. Yes. Two psychologists won the Nobel Prize in economics. You should look them up. Their writing is amazing. What they demonstrated was that economics is simply the behavior of human beings when it has to do with economic choices. And behavior of human beings is studied best in psychology. So what that taught me is that a lot of things that are going on in our country that we're going to discuss today, we understand what is happening, but we don't know why it is happening. And that why is because we're asking economists, and they'll give you the economic answers. We'll ask financial experts, they'll give you the financial answers. You ask accountants, you ask politicians. But I don't think it's crossed anybody's mind to ask psychologists, what's the reason everybody's doing the same thing for apparently no sensible reason? So if you understand how that dovetails into what's going on, then I think it will change the way the discussions would happen. Also, what I would like to say is, I'm sure we've all had, that annoying chair or bed where you always hit your little toe on. Does that happen to anybody? You're walking, I don't know why that pain, it just goes straight to the back of the head. Once that happens, if you are going to eat, food takes a back seat. If you are rushing for a meeting, anything you wanted to do just before you hit that toe stops. Because that's what pain does. When people are in pain, the only thing they focus on is eliminating the pain. Regarding where we are as a country, the whole country is in a lot of emotional and psychological pain. So whatever anybody is talking about, it's not because that is the most important thing. So you find a lot of discussions around FX. And everybody will tell you FX is the most important thing. FX is the most imminent pain point we have. If you don't remove that pain point, nobody's going to talk about unemployment. Nobody's going to talk about youth unemployment. Nobody's going to talk about the drug problem. Nobody's going to talk about the crime problem, because right now, it's like sitting on needles. If you don't get those needles out, nothing's going to happen. So I'm going to go very quickly to this presentation just to set the tone. You won't believe when I did it, so I'm not going to make any excuses. So this is the country's debt position. Is there a laser here somewhere? No. Okay, this is the country's debt position. Again, I use graphs. Don't worry about what the numbers are saying. The story tells itself. The yellow line right on top, or rather the black bars, are debt to GDP. which is what everybody talks about. Debt to GDP is low. It compares to Brazil, compares to Cameroon, compares to Wakanda. Debt to GDP is amazing, right? But as far as I'm concerned, GDP does not pay debt, right? Now, what's our debt service to revenue ratio? That's the yellow line, right? Now, if you have a debt service to debt service to revenue line, and you're almost, and this is percentages, you're almost using 100% of your revenue to service debt, and somebody tells you we have room to borrow, I think you tell the person to go and do something uncomplimentary to himself. There is no space to borrow. Or rather, there's space to borrow. There's no space to repay whatever you borrow. Now, this is another topic I really like. MPR versus inflation. The orange line, which is almost a straight line, is MPR. Inflation is the black line. As far as I'm concerned, we have misdefined inflation in Nigeria. I wrote an article in Business Day about 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of a title, but in Business Day 2 weeks ago, it's the fact that when we say inflation, we generally refer to demand pull inflation. We all seem to have forgotten that there is something called cost push inflation, right? Demand pull inflation is the traditional inflation, too much money chasing too few goods, too money supply, blah, 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 blah. But cost push inflation is when prices of goods are rising because input cost is rising, right? And if you break down input cost into three in Nigeria, interest rates is the cost of production, foreign exchange is the cost of production, then let's say wages and others as the others. So guess what? FX price has gone up. It's an input cost for production. So what happens to price? Price moves up. And then we have inflation. And then our central bank decides to bring inflation down. We increase interest rates. What's interest rate? It's a cost. So as you increase the interest rate and the FX rate goes up, what happens to price? Price goes up. And we have more inflation. And to tackle more inflation, what do? Increase interest rates again. And so we find that because we think we're dealing with just demand pull inflation and not cost push, we seem to be lagging behind. We're increasing cost of production, hoping to bring price down. I don't think that is a solution that would work given our peculiar circumstance. This is another very interesting chart. I just put some charts so that each table will have something to discuss, right? This is inflow of foreign capital from, chart starts from 2013 to 2022. We know what happened 2017, 2016 when we had the recession. Capital crashed, right? We had that problem. As we started resolving the problem, we introduced the I&E window, willing buyer, willing seller concept. We freed the market, introduced a hedging instrument through FMDQ exchange and all of that. Confidence came back. So during the recession, what happened? You could look at this as a confidence chart. During a recession, confidence in your economy tanks, right? When we put all those bolsters in place and confidence came back, confidence rose, inflows came back. And then 2020, COVID and all of that, confidence crashed again. And after confidence crashed, inflows came down. So trying to bring this inflow back up, I'll say the answer is very simple. What did we do between 2017 and 2019? It's copy and paste. We restored confidence by introducing certain measures. We just need to do it again. Right? This is a chart I did for a minister in 2020. Right? Right? So this is the behavior of foreign portfolio investors. The blue line is what they were putting in equities. This goes back to 2007. The blue line is equities. Historically, foreign investors, portfolio investors were mainly in equities. The green line was money markets. In 2013 2017, 2018, you see a very sudden crash in equities and rise in money markets. Why? The central bank created a policy of attracting foreign investors, and that's the period we had OMO, open market operations, a special instrument that by the time I was doing this chart in 2020, the former central bank governor had issued more OMO bills in 2 years than the entire tenure of SLS and Soludo put together. And we saw the effect. Hot money became even hotter. They pulled out of equities where they're adding, in my opinion, real value, went into money markets as hot money. And of course, that's the problem we're having today with a backlog of them trying to leave that can't leave. So sometimes our policy has behavioral impacts that we don't really comprehend. This is also a similar chart, shows the same thing. How the change in policy 2018, 2019 changed the behavior of our foreign investors. Last slide, just a throwaway for everybody. This is how much some countries spend on research and development. So when we talk about raising money, we think about raising money to spend it for the economy, to import, to bolster the market. Some other countries are raising money for R&D. And you find that the countries that raise money for R&D have used the US, China, India, and the Eurozone. Nigeria does not even feature. I mean, I don't know anybody here that knows how much we spent on R&D. But that's just something for us to have a good look at. So we have 5 tables. This is just an introduction on the fact that whatever we're discussing, it might not be the traditional solutions that we should consider. Those traditional solutions, everybody knows them. But we may need to look much deeper. Why are things happening the way they are happening? They've been happening the same way for 10, 15, 20 years. Is what's going on now a cause or a symptom of something else? Should we get to the root cause? So I'm hoping each table will have 5 tables. I'm going to list out all the tables. Table 1, which is here. So the tables are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Table 1 is headed by Ike Chioke. And the discussion is strengthening the debt capital markets for foreign and domestic finance mobilization. Table 2 is headed by Ms. Ndidi Ukono. Topic for Table 2 is strengthening the equity capital markets for foreign and domestic finance mobilization. So this debt market, capital markets, equity markets, sorry. Table 3, which I think is crucial. Regulatory imperatives for foreign exchange liquidity, which is headed by Ms. Chinwe Egwem. Is she here? Yes. Okay. Now, I think regulatory, from the charts, we saw that as CBN policy changed, the behavior of investors changed. So what the regulators do is very important to how we react. We may not know it, but that table is really, really important. Table 4 over there is headed by Dr. Lazarus Angbazo, strengthening the infrastructure development finance atmosphere. Right? And then the last table is Table 5 over there, headed by Mr. Nia Jao. What's the topic for that table? Digital finance solutions, right? Yes. Sorry? Okay, financial inclusion. I should have guessed that. Nia Jao is the sector head in NESG for financial inclusion. So those are 5 tables. This is a spare table. So please, whatever table it is that you have any interest in particular, you can join that table. The tables have about 30 minutes to deliberate on their topics. Somebody is going to be rapporteur, take notes, and then at the end, a 5-minute summary from each table head or whoever they nominate will come up and give us the solutions. NESG is curating all of this and to form part of the policy paper. We have a few people online. At the end of the table sessions, we'll get some contributions from them. We have 2 co-chairs for this session. Senator Abubakar Bagudu, the Minister for Budget and Economic Planning, and Dr. Yemi Cardoso, the CBN Governor. We're hoping at some point they may send representatives or pop in. But whatever the case, they're going to get the conclusions at the end of the summit. So let's start our deliberations. I'm free if you have any questions. I doubt you would, but I'm free if you have any questions, and I'll just roam around. Thank you very much. Yeah, so whatever tables you're interested in, if you are already on the table you want, it's perfectly okay. If you want to join some other particular conversation, you feel free to move. But conversation start now, because I understand we have a hard stop for this session at 10:40. So we have to round up in about 30 minutes. 11:40, sorry, my bad. 11:40. So 11:40, we have a hard stop. So the tables need to round up between 11:25 and 11:30.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, online. Can you hear me? Please signify by raising your hand if you can hear me. Hello? I think we have the ability to give feedback and speak online. So please let me know if I have any online participants that is with me on this. Oh, great. Okay. Okay. So we already have a party with at least 2 people. Thank you. So we're going to take a few minutes and talk about one of the roundtable sessions that we have. And this is just an avenue for us online participants to be able to discuss and participate around these interesting conversations that we have. I think we have about 5 key topics or key tables that we need to take the conversations around. So we're going to start with the first one, which is very, very interesting around financial inclusion. Guys, this is supposed to be a very, very interesting conversations where we all share thoughts and ideas around this. And the idea for us is to see how we can come up with unconventional solutions. I think we have the free rein to go all the way out without tying ourselves down to any constraint or anything that we know we've been doing before that may not be working. I believe we have the capacity to think outside the box right now. So, guys, should we start with this? Just give me a minute. Let's get one of partners to join us on this. Okay, guys, and then we also agreed with the participant that an online participant will be responsible for giving us the synopsis around this. The resolution that we come up with will be delivered by a member. So do we have any volunteer on this right now? Anybody wants to volunteer for us on this? And by the way, just to talk about the 5 tables that we have, the first one is strengthening the debt capital markets for foreign and domestic finance mobilization. The second is strengthening the equity capital markets for foreign and domestic finance mobilization. The third is around regulatory imperatives for foreign exchange liquidity. The fourth one is around strengthening the infrastructure development financing atmosphere. And the fifth one is around advancing financial inclusion with consumer credits. So should we start from the bottom? Advancing financial inclusion with consumer credits. Do you have a volunteer that would be a scribe for this, and then volunteer to also do the final presentation when we presenting our positions to the House? Anybody? Faisola, I see your hand up. Okay, I take it you are volunteering for us on this. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, guys, so let's go into the conversation. Somebody was making a comment earlier, so I'll recommend if you could start. We're talking about advancing financial inclusion with consumer credits. How do we deepen financial inclusion? And I think at the default, we can look at the constraints that we have for financial inclusion, which is accessibility of the financial sector to most of the people that are currently financially excluded. How do we deepen that? How do we shorten the gap? How do we bring them into the formal ecosystem? And what are the various options that we have of deepening consumer credit within this ecosystem that is currently out of the formal financial sector? Anybody willing to give us a perspective on this? Ladies and gentlemen online, I'll appreciate your feedback on this, please. Help me out. Okay, Mr. Fatai, so please, you want to help us out, please? So what are your thoughts around deepening financial inclusion through with consumer credits? What can we do as a country, and what can we do more? Good morning. Oh, great. Thank you, Mr. Batai. That's a very, very solid point you made. And I take it as having a unified identifier database for users to promote financial inclusion across all geographies, right? Okay, thank you. I'm sure our scribe has noted that appropriately. Okay, so anybody else to give us possible solutions around this? Hi, Mr. Karima Lawal.
Yeah. So I believe that the first thing to speak about when we're thinking of financial inclusion for the financially excluded people, especially consumer credit, would be to actually rethink our goal as to why we want to include people and why we're taking the actions we're taking, right? There's a need to understand that most financially excluded people are excluded because of some constraints, right? The best constraints would be, yes, access to credit, like the topic we're talking about, right? The second thing would be access to even financial institutions, say brick and mortar financial institutions, or technologies that help them to access financial institutions. People like myself and yourself, we don't need to walk into any bank because we perhaps have smartphones that can, I can't remember the last time I entered into a bank, right? But these excluded people most likely do not have the smartphone or feature phones that allows them to access financial services. So they most likely also have access to brick and mortar banks, right? If you go to the deep of the country, you find out that many of these places have maybe just one microfinance bank running, right? And so how do we now engage these people? How do we get them financially included? Some institutions are trying to, say, use the phone numbers as primary keys to create accounts for them and all. However, you need to also now how do I say it, assess the efficiency of this. Mr. Fatai talked about the fact that somebody could access a loan in Lagos and travel to Port Harcourt, and you can't find them. So, yeah, it's difficult for somebody to use your phone number to access loans. Without your knowledge, right? So how do we now move these people to get them financially included? I believe that institutions that are getting financial services to the people that are financially excluded should get, I would say, incentive from, say, the government or the DFIs that would now give them loans at lower costs to now extend these credits to the financially excluded people. That's one. Two, how do you keep these people in check when you extend credit to them? First, the credit sizes that would be extended to them are so, if you look at the size or the ticket size of that credit that you're giving them, it's low. If you give somebody somebody that is financially excluded, if you give them the credit facility, say up to 50,000 naira, they can actually make a good use of it, based on their own standard of living, and they will do well. So the risk of default is also quite, I'd say, low, right? So also there are other means by which you can track these people. Say you say contributory repayment, where you go and visit them and recollect back from them, right? So, but we need to rethink these things and not see it as from the perspectives of people who live in the city. You need to be within these people and understand their problems and understand how they actually live their lives so that you can now create solutions for them. And like I said, there needs to be incentive for institutions that are providing these services or that are trying to provide these services to financially excluded people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawal. Really appreciate that. And just to summarize what you're saying, the first is we need to have community-based banking services at that level. We can't provide the services when we're not in those community, so there needs to be structure to enable businesses that are carrying out these financial inclusion services to be able to seamlessly carry out those services within the community. And then the government should be able to provide incentives, not necessarily cash. It could be infrastructure, it could be some kind of rebate or some kind of access that they need to be able to go to these communities to carry out these activities. Is that right? Can we go with that, Mr. Law? Okay, I take that as a yes. Thank you, thank you. Do we have anybody else that wants to contribute on this? And the interesting thing about the topic is how can we use consumer credit to advance financial inclusion? So I play in the agricultural ecosystem. And one of the things we've discovered is most of the farmers we work with are unbanked, right? So the question is, how are we able to extend credits to them even though they're unbanked? And Mr. Lawal made reference to a very, very valid point, especially as well as the first speaker, which is wallet system. How can we use people's phone numbers as a way for identifying them? And this also speaks to the unification of identification. For you to have a phone number in Nigeria now, you need NIN. For you to have your international passports, you need NIN. So there's already a form of unification with NIN as the base. How can we deepen this? Or is it possible for us to identify credit advancing entities? We know at this rural community, there are a lot of AJO, the way we say it typically, right? These collective schemes, which is well organized, which is very, very deep, and has a lot of penetration. How do we get them all? Or how can we leverage on this to advance financial inclusion? Anybody willing to give us a perspective on this?
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Okay. I just want to make reference to, just in line with what you just said. I know some financial institutions already in Nigeria are making use of cooperative. You know, we do have different cooperative societies in the country. So instead of asking these financially excluded people to, bring normal requirements, to access loan, what some banks are doing, I know BOI did it in the past. I don't know if they are still doing it. They approach, or when these cooperative societies approach them, as in approach BOI, for instance, let's say 100 individuals are members of that cooperative society. So what they do is they can give loan to the first 10, such that the remaining 90 members are like watchdogs, are like, people that are monitoring the first 10 to make sure that, the loan given to them is repaid. So invariably, without any extra effort, from BOI, for instance. The other 90 who are yet to, receive their own loan are monitoring the first 10, making sure that they repay. Because they know until they repay, before they can also have access to it. So it takes time, but at the end of the day, it gets to everyone without asking them for, collateral, go and bring your father's house before you can access funding. So in a way, this kind of model, can be strengthened by so many other financial institutions in the country, such that we make it as a working strategy when it comes to giving, local people access to funding, through financial institutions. I just want to bring that on the table. There's a way we can, fine tune it to make it like, something that is like a working strategy for some of financial institutions in the country, by way of giving access to the unbanked community in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Fatai, and very, very valid points. And just to summarize, you're saying we should be able to layer the current financial sector on these informal associations where we could leverage on collective guarantee to promote financial inclusion and access to credit on the back of that.
Correct.
Thank you very much. I think we're out of time, and we have 3 points that we came up with. Fishayo, sorry, I hope I got the name right. If you could just help us summarize, and just to ask, would you be willing to do the presentation on behalf of the online team?
Hello, it's Faye, not Fisayo.
Yeah, Faye, apologies for that.
Yeah. So okay, I can actually do the presentation, but I would like to say that I may not be showing my face. I hope that is okay.
That's fine. They're already cutting us off now. So I'll go. And so when they call us,
all right,
you'll be representing us.
Good morning, everybody.
Thank
again.
You, Faye.
All right.
There's never enough time to finish. Morning again. No, we understand the time constraints. There is never enough time to finish. I think the mistake the organizers made is that there's no alcohol on the tables. Because I personally can never discuss Nigeria's issues without alcohol. It's just not, I just can't. So it's Nigeria's issues. You need to be lightheaded to discuss it. Otherwise you'll be traumatized. Okay, we have the representative of the Minister for Budget and Planning, Mr. Nebolisa Anako. So we need to really round up because we have a hard stop. If we don't stop now, they're going to bounce us from the hall. Table 1, Table 2, Table 3, Table 4, Table 5, we need to round up right now. Table 3, we're done. We need to stop. Does each table have somebody to do a 3-minute summary? Okay. We're really running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I would need each table head to come forward and do a summary of what all the discussions have been. And I think we should start in the order of table 1. table 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, Mr. Ike Chioke, you not right now. We'll give you another 30 seconds. Ms. Ndidiu Konu, Ms. Chinwe Egwim, Dr. Lazarus, and Mr. Nia Jao. You will do the summary for each table. Feishola would also, okay, we had an online class, so Feishola would do that for the online class. So I would like to invite to the high table the representative of the Minister for Budget and Economic Planning, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Mr. Nebo Lisanako. Round of applause for him, please. Okay, so like I said, it's these things, I've done this for a few years. There is never enough time. So don't feel bad that you didn't finish. And we just hope the conversations can continue after today. That's it. Okay, so does any table need some alcohol to be able to digest what you've, okay, I'll sort you out. All right, table 1, please. We'll start from table 1 and go to table 5 and the online class. Yes, please. Come up here and then 3-minute summary, if you don't mind. 3 minutes for each summary. At least we have the permanent secretary here. He's taking notes, so please, as brief as possible.
I don't need to repeat the question. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Table 1 was focusing on strengthening the debt capital markets for foreign and domestic finance mobilization. We had 2 questions. First question, how can the Nigerian debt capital market be positioned to mobilize sustainable inflows of financial resources that drive economic transformation in Nigeria? The second question, what practical measures are needed to strengthen the Nigerian debt capital market to attract and sustain investment and motivate long-term holding within the economy? So we tackled the questions with a variety of ideas. One of our participants recalled that there once was a tax waiver for corporate bonds that elapsed in 2022. So you've not seen a lot of corporate instruments coming out in the light of a pension industry that is 16 trillion naira size, and most of the investments in the pension the PFAs are doing is to hold federal government instruments. There's a point about the absence of credit insurance in Nigeria, that if there was credit insurance, then this will give comfort to lenders to provide capacity so that this will drive consumer financing. There's also the issue about regulatory flip-flops that has mitigated, prevented more investment flows. And there's this need to have a more stable, more favorable government environment. We also looked at the banking sector and recognized that for the average bank, if a bank is holding 100 naira as a deposit, the amount really available to lend is something like 10 naira when you look at the CRR debit, the cash reserve ratio, the loan to deposit ratio. So therefore, there's really not enough capacity for the bank to lend. And the central bank then needs to kind of focus on some of their policies and see that they're actually not making any sense, because there's something like 6 trillion naira of CRL deposits that they are holding at the moment, which is not available to be lent to companies. We looked at the diaspora inflows and thought about how can the government attract the $25+ billion of inflows that come into Nigeria from over about 70 million Nigerians that live abroad. How can we create instruments that are targeted to those inflows? But in thinking about that, we also recognize that within the Nigerian banking system, many Nigerians hold their savings in dollars in their domiciliary accounts. And these monies are just sitting idle, so that in trying to attract the diaspora inflows into financial instruments, we should actually start with a structure that works with mobilizing the dollars that are sitting in Nigerian current accounts. And that could be, maybe having creating the framework essentially for corporates to issue in dollars in the domestic market and enabling dollars to move from the current account to well-structured transactions that will allow more of these resources to be tackled. So, for example, if a company like Lagos Free Trade Zone could raise money and get infra credit, a Nigerian entity to give a credit guarantee around it, then certainly we can see that such companies, more companies can be invited to come and raise not just Naira, but also dollars and try and attract those dollars from the Nigerian deposit environment. So that's sort of the summary of what we have put together. There's a lot of ideas, but we'll try to summarize as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's taking all the self-discipline I've mastered over the last years not to say anything. I'll let it slide. All right, table 2, Ms. Ndidi Ukonu. They were discussing strengthening the equity capital market, so let's hear what your table concluded.
So I brought my PowerPoint along with me. You can see. No, we'll be fine. They gave us the screen only, and we thought we had to use it. Okay, so on table 2, we were trying to address 2 questions. How can the Nigerian equity capital market be positioned to mobilize sustainable inflows of financial resources that drive economic transformation in Nigeria? That was question 1. And question 2 was, what practical measures are needed to strengthen the Nigerian equity capital market to attract and sustain investment and motivate long-term holding within the economy? As the session was going on, I just thought that Zeal was so correct. We needed to have alcohol on the table. If not, we were just going to go crazy. But I love the conversation that we had, and we landed on 3 broad answers. But just to set the context for us, because the MSMEs employ 80% of the population, we believe that if we want to make immediate impact in the economy, we should be looking at raising capital in the MSME space. If they do better, more Nigerians do better, and we have a better economy. So for us, number 1 would be awareness. Why create awareness? In the course of the conversation, we discovered, like developed countries, we do have an alternative market where MSMEs can list. But sadly, on the NGX, we have an alternative market. Only 4 companies are listed on that market. Now, it begs the question, are people even aware that there is such a market that they can come to raise long-term capital? So awareness is super critical for us. Number 2 would be, how do we make the alternative market more active? And beyond the awareness, there were a few things. We probably need to look at what the entry barrier. Yes, the NGX has established this alternative platform, but we probably need to look again at what the entry barrier is like. Entry barrier in terms of cost, entry barrier in terms of requirements, entry barrier in terms of the processes. Do we need to rework that? And then that would be a risk-adjusted reworking for us, because we also need to develop confidence in that space for investors, especially in the mass affluent space, to come in. And if we're going to achieve that, we learned from other markets that there is, what other markets do on that space is they appoint advisors. Some call them sponsors. The London Stock Exchange has something like that. They have a certain requirement of the type of auditors. They have certain requirements for them just to support the structuring process. And in doing that, boost the confidence of the potential investors in that space. Under making the alternative markets more active, we had a very, very important point that was made on our table, and that was research and development. Are the stock markets today just waiting for people to approach? I don't know if it needs to be done as a CSR, but the research and development teams in the exchanges need to take a frontal action, and they need to go into the market. In our discussion, mining came up, agriculture came up. There are people in that MSME space who are already doing things. Do we want to go out, be proactive, get them in to come and do something? And then finally, we talked about products. We need to have sustainability products, and we need to have diaspora-centric products. In summary, what we just realized, if you're going to attract the foreign exchange, there is still domestic investment that must happen in Nigeria to identify the potential, bring the companies up to a state where foreign monies can then chase them. So indeed, the exchanges have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, advice for the future when you're discussing Nigeria's issues: either have alcohol on your table or have a very heavy breakfast. Don't do it with an empty stomach. It's not good for your health. So it's not a good idea, I promise you. Table 3, regulatory imperative for foreign exchange liquidity. We have Chinwe Egwim. 3 minutes, please. No, 3 minutes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The 30 minutes wasn't sufficient for this topic, and it was FX, and we actually had 2 questions, not 1. The first was, how can non-banking financial institutions enhance the flow of FX? And then the second was what you mentioned, regulatory imperatives for FX liquidity. I'll do my best to talk fast. It's a skill I have. So, summary. So the first bullet I have here is the BDC parallel market, that is not regulated, and authorities need to look into that. It's also giving room for criminal funding, so that control is required. On the table, data came out that we have over 5,000 BDCs, and this needs to be fixed. That's just too many of them. Eliminate isolated policy approaches. I'm sure all tables would agree with this. We put policies. Nigeria is not lacking policy creation, it's implementation, and we do it in such a manner that it's isolated. And then we make a policy here that when we think about the effective impact, it is positive, but then it's adversely impacting something else. So that isolated approach needs to stop. Formalize the informal with SMEs in focus. There's so much potential there. An example that came out on the table was when you look at SME owners on social media, for example, they are driving exports. But are we recording the receipts that are coming out of that? No, we're not. So formalize the informal with SMEs in focus. We need to tap into the orange economy. Ghana is benefiting so much from talents that come out of Nigeria. That was an example given. So there are music fests and things like that generate FX inflow for the Ghanaian economy, especially in December. Why are we not doing that here? I do know that things like security and other structural or foundational issues need to be fixed for us to be able to enjoy that kind of benefit, but it's something that is possible. FX repatriation issues. People wonder, why would I bring money in when I'm going to struggle to take it out? So that is something that needs to be sorted as well. What else? Strengthening policy implementation willpower. We need to also do like a risk assessment of previous policies around FDIs and FPIs. Standardization as well when it comes to non-oil exports, the products that we're exporting. I know that we do have SON, but perhaps enhancing whatever comes out from that institution. Boost value chain proceeds. When we talk about a sectoral approach, we're talking about mining, agriculture, manufacturing. We need to also look into the value chain processes for those. Transparency and credibility is important, and for all, but for the FX market dynamics, so monitoring and evaluation is something that needs to be put on the front burner as well. Cards were also mentioned. This is more of a banking thing. So cards, debit, credit cards generally do not work outside the country. This is information that I got. I'm not speaking as Chinwe. The adverse is adversely impacting potential inflows. I'm almost done. Currency exchange. So yeah, changing dollar to the pound, that is difficult. It's not easy. There's no ease with that. So that's something that needs to be looked at. He's chasing me away. Structure for sustainable FX market flows, that would attract investors. When we go on roadshows, these are the kind of things that we hear from foreign investors. Let me just say this last one, the MPR. I did ask this question because it is important for FPI inflow. Rate hikes. The general concession is that rate hikes should continue, even though from my perspective, I'm not seeing the rate hikes tame inflation per se, because you did mention it's more cost push as opposed to demand pull. But apparently the view is that more rate hikes should happen, hit a certain level before trimming begins. So I do hope that all these recommendations would be put into a document that is shared with the right authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, looking at the faces in this room, I think the average age is not in the Japa range. So I don't think many people here would have, no. I don't think many people here would have done IELTS. But see, something she said, very important what she added. You know, she said, he's chasing me away. I know this is recorded. Now imagine she didn't add away. I mean, it would have had a completely different meaning. So table 4, we have strengthening the infrastructure developmental finance atmosphere. Dr. Lazarus Angbazo. No, you're not Dr. Lazarus. All right, he's representing table 4.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Egba. I am the representative of the U.S. government's Projects Preparation Agency, USTDA. Table 4 focused on infrastructure financing, which is, sort of what we also focus on. We started out with a very sobering, summary of infrastructure in Nigeria. As we all know, Nigeria lags heavily in infrastructure. BPE basically highlights about 11,000 projects that are currently stranded at different levels. Nigeria is really in dire need of spending about 3 trillion naira over 30 years. We also know that Nigeria is 24th in Africa in terms of infrastructure, and then the World Bank puts us up about 120 in infrastructure globally, $3 trillion, I beg your pardon, over 30 years. So we were looking to answer 2 questions. The first one was really about how financial markets can support infrastructure financing. We had some very good suggestions. The first one was really about investing in project preparation, so pre-FID. Basically, financial institutions would need to take sort of a more forward approach in financing pre-FID on a risk-return basis. We also looked at the need to develop bankable business models. So, I mean, it's not just good enough that you have a pipeline of infrastructure projects that are bankable, but you really need business models that can be applied in this market and that can also scale globally, that can attract investment financing. And then the third was really around a pipeline of bankable deals. What we hear internationally is that there's a lot of money chasing very few projects. There are not enough bankable deals. So the idea is, how do we change the narrative? We really need to have a pipeline of deals that are ready to go. There's also a need for a focus on priority sectors. This will segue into the next question, which was around what reforms can enhance financial markets to support infrastructure financing. So this was really around focusing on priority sectors. There are some sectors that, can basically help to catalyze additional financing. There are some what we call critical sectors. So your energy sector, your health sector, your transport sector, and there was one suggestion around, even having executive orders that would support road construction and road maintenance because of how important it is to Nigeria's GDP. We talked about consistency in government policy, especially around PPP support. It's very clear that the government, needs to do more in terms of supporting public-private partnerships. And we talked, especially around, some of the concessionary financing that is available from the likes of the Bank of Industry, as well as InfraCorp. And then our colleague also mentioned InfraCredit earlier on when he was speaking. So the last thing that we talked about was clarifying and codifying these challenges. So we do know that there are a lot of challenges, but we need to be sort of focused, laser focused, if you will, on, these challenges. And, the role of these critical sectors or the subject of the critical sectors kept coming up. So I think that's one thing that we're unanimous on our table was there has to be a focus on sectors that are, critical to driving infrastructure. Thank you all very much. I think that's what we discussed on table 4.
Thank you very much. So we have table 5, Mr. Nia Jao, what was it? Digital finance solutions, right?
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I represent that's table 5, looking at financial inclusion with credits. It's about the largest of the five groups there. We started by looking at the dilemma of what we're facing in the country right now. Nigeria is a country that does cash down for everything, which is very, very abnormal given the development we've seen in financing all over the world presently. It's one of those few countries where you have to save all the money you need to buy a land, you have to save all the money you need to buy a car. We felt that's a complete aberration. So we need to grow credits and grow financial inclusion. We even spoke to the point of the cards we have in our pockets. All our cards, over 99% of the cards we have in Nigeria are debit cards. If you look at the story of cards, the way they started, cards were meant to be credit cards, where I can spend over a period of time, and then the issuer of the card can then give me my statement at the end of the month, and then agree on how to repay it back gradually. Many of us have seen this work in many other countries. Why is it not happening here? The topic we're discussing, issue of credit and financial inclusion, we believe will help a lot to change all of this. A scenario where an average employee earns salary monthly. Many of us here are employers. We pay our staff monthly, but that staff wants to rent a house, is being asked to to pay rent 1 year, 2 years in advance. No wonder there's so much pressure. Our people are facing so much pressure, and there's corruption all over the place because of that mismatch. So we believe the discussions here will help a lot to correct that situation, and then Nigeria can begin to move on. One thing we all agreed on is that the basic fundamentals we need to grow financial inclusion and to grow consumer credit in Nigeria, the basics are already in place. We have very vibrant banks. We have payment service banks now. We have the instant payment system, which many countries are still struggling to have. We have bank agents, over 2 million of them now across the country. Everywhere you go to in Nigeria, you find bank agents who are, with the POS, they're able to do cash in, cash out. We believe that foundation is already there. We just need to build on it to achieve what we want. So we have about 10 recommendations here to achieve the purpose. Number 1, we believe we need to properly harmonize the disparate KYC system we have, identity system we have. Because the average lender will not lend money out to somebody that you are not sure who this person is. You are not even sure if I sign a contract of 3 months repayment, am I sure by the 2nd month I'll be able to see this person, or if this person decides not to repay, how can I get him? What do we have in place in the system to ensure that we can track him? So we have the BVN, we have a driver license system, we have the NIN, we have so many of them, passports and all that. We believe there need to be a proper aggregation there so that lenders will be at peace that, oh, okay, I can lend because I know that if you default, you cannot run away, I can catch you. The second one we talk about is having a tracking system similar to that first one, a tracking system where if I default in repayment and I decide not to show up and I don't answer the phone calls of the borrower anymore, the borrower should have a way of being able to know where I am, being able to track me down. The third one here is we believe lenders need to be encouraged. So government needs to explore the possibility of giving tax credits to lenders to encourage them to give credit more because of the peculiar situation we have in our country. Another idea that came is the idea of a sovereign credit guarantee. Government can have an institution that gives sovereign credit guarantee to individuals. With that, they can go to lenders and borrow money. Lenders will give money because they know that that guarantee will help them to recover their money, or we even, more like a guarantor kind of arrangement. It works well in other countries. We are one of us who have worked in about 5 different countries around this. He shared his experience, and something that can work very well here that we need to look at. We have a legal problem in this country that is really causing credit not to grow. The Bankruptcy Act is so deficient. The Bankruptcy Act, we all agree that today it is skewed in favor of the borrower. So if I borrow money and I can refuse to pay, and I say, take me to court now. When I get to court, I know that somehow the court, they favor me more than you, the borrower. Because of that, our credit is not good. So we believe the act needs to be reviewed, and then we need to explore the possibility of having dedicated credit courts with judges that have proper knowledge about how to deal with such situations, so that lenders, their mind are at peace. They know that they can only recover the money, or they can even sell securities. They can sell the collateral when somebody refuses to repay. Access. Okay, somebody shared experience too that in many countries, it is not only banks that give credit or that give loans. Stores, supermarket can give loans. And I think it used to happen in this country. I remember I had a card one time with a USC in a marina, where they give you the card, you can go and buy things, and you pay them gradually later. We need to encourage that more and more. Agency banking need to be empowered. They are all over the country. NIPOs need to be restructured. We've seen the way the NIPO system works in many other countries. You can go to a NIPO store and do all agency banking does in this country today. And finally, mortgage perfection is a big problem for us in this country. To perfect your title of properties takes 3 to 5 years, 8 years. Someone shared experience where in many countries, 2-3 days, you can perfect your property. When you perfect it, it then becomes, it's usable easily as collateral to collect loans. And finally, inclusion is something we believe we need to grow. The point was made very clearly that many people today cannot collect credits because they don't have data. There's no credit history about them. And there's no credit history because they don't have bank accounts. So the two of them work somewhat together. So we need to grow credit and grow inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have the online people. Online, please, if you can summarize in less than 1 minute. We have a hard stop. This hall is going to be used and I need to prepare it, so we need to get out of here like 10 minutes ago. So online, we have 1.5 minutes. Are they ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay, go ahead, please.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Faishola representing the online participants. We also discussed advancing financial inclusion with consumer credit, and we realized that when talking about financial inclusion, we're talking about the unbanked rather, and we're able to identify that there is no uniform database for identification when it comes to the unbanked. We have BVN, we have NIN, so we're able to conclude that when we have a unified database for identifying the unbanked, that we're going to, financial inclusion will actually be promoted well in Nigeria. And then from there, we move to the fact that the unbanked are actually constrained by different factors. For example, they don't have access to credit tools like we think that they have access to. They don't have access to financial institutions that actually create these opportunities for credit facilities and credit tools and all that, and also technology. A lot of them don't have Android phones that can actually access these financial institutions that give out loans. So we just saw that, okay, how do we make sure that the unbanked in these rural areas, how do we make sure that they have access to
30
credit?
seconds more.
Okay, then the final question we're able to raise was, how do we get a credit guarantee that doesn't require them to bring in a lot of collaterals and all that, things that we know they don't have access to. So we're able to conclude that number one, we should have a unified database for identification. Then number two, we should actually have a community-based financial institution in all these communities, or financial solutions that understands the actual problem of the unbanked and that also know the way they live their lives. Then we also identify that there are certain institutions who already provide opportunities for credit tools for the unbanked. We concluded that the government should be able to provide structure for these financial institutions and also incentives, not in terms of money, but in terms of facilities that they need for operations and all that. And then finally, for guarantee, this is the last one, I promise. For guarantee, we realized that we can actually leverage the AJO system, where AJO collectors use this collective guarantee to ensure that everybody pays up what they have to pay up when they want to get credit. So we saw that leveraging the correct collective guarantee that
Okay, I think I didn't.
Okay, yes. So we. Sorry, I thought I was already off air. So yeah,
you
basically
should be
using that to ensure that we promote, we leverage collective guarantee to promote financial inclusion. So basically, those were the things that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, this is the hardest part of my job because everybody has said stuff, and on a lot of the topics, I'm a member of something or the other that has deliberated this, and it's really hard not to say what I want to say. But thank you, everybody. It's been very, very useful. One thing I would say, I think Chinwe mentioned something that was very unusual, that it's difficult to change pounds to dollars. Let's discuss offline. I don't think there's anything easier than that. But, okay, that's fine. The domestic dollar market, the parallel market, I've heard it a lot of times, let's regulate the parallel market. You don't really regulate an illegal market. You enforce, they are breaking the law by existing. You enforce it. You don't, otherwise you pull them in, but that's a different conversation. Financing stuff on a risk-return basis with the MPR hikes, because there's a disconnect between MPR and real interest rates. So MPR is 18.75, but the government is borrowing at 5 or 6%, and lending is at 26%. There's a disconnect. So some of these things are stuff that a lot of committees have come together, but I'm sure the NSG will put it all together, and then we'll be able to deliberate further on it. Thank you very much. In conclusion, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry for Budget and Economic Planning, you have anything to say? You can't be here and we'll just not give you. So let's give me a round of applause, please.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. The different tables, the government side, the private sector participants. My name is Nebolis Anako. I'm here to stand in for the co-chair, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. I've sat in and I've listened and I've taken some notes. Actually, I participated with Table 4 with Dr. Lazarus, MD Infracorp, and other heavyweight bankers there. And so a lot have come out from this interaction. Yesterday, Mr. President was there, and he gave a commitment that he's awaiting the suggestions from this summit to aid government in moving forward in building the economy in the right position. So all the top issues raised are germane. Some of them have to do with the Central Bank of Nigeria, the monetary side, and he's not here. But on the issue of the Table 1 dealt with repositioning the capital market and the practical measures to strengthen it. And they talked of tax credit, bonds, diaspora inflow, and so on. Table 2 also, equity market, how to position it to drive sustainable development. They also talked of creating alternative markets, making it active and attractive for to reduce barriers for MSCs and so on and so forth, and to attract and sustain investment. Table 3, your questions and the answers you gave on how to improve the non-banking space to institutions to enhance forex inflow. And you talked of maybe regulating more, reducing the BDCs and so on, and eliminating isolated policy approach. Table 5 also, including, Table 4, infrastructure, I'll come back to it. The online participants, Dishola, spoke on, asked a question, advancing financial inclusion for the embarked, and suggested unified database and access to credit and so on. So these are all well taken. The directors, some directors of the budget and economic planning are here. They are taking copious notes. The NESG also here. Our private co-hosts, private sector co-hosts, they have taken copious notes. So we compile this and definitely we sift it, and these are all very useful. But on a general note, we'll have to understand, because I know a lot of investors, bankers, Nigerian bankers are here, and other investors. One of the work is also cut out. Yeah, well, on the government side, we have to play our role. But if you look at the National Development Plan, 80% of the budget we're anticipating from the private sector, while the government budget takes care of the rest. And on the government side, we've been doing some bonds to fund the infrastructure. On tax credit alone, we have it has taken over 3 trillion naira in the few years we have started it. And I don't think it's something we'll continue, because this tax credit also detracts from government revenue. But we must understand that funded infrastructure like roads, rails, bridges, these are heavy investments. And the environment, we need to de-risk it. I think there should be more brainstorming on this. Because, you know, capital is shy. Capital is sensitive to risks. So to fund infrastructure, it requires long-term financing. So that's why I mentioned the banks earlier. This long-term financing, sometimes, in fact, it's difficult to come by. Let's say the truth. Because if you are to fund a major road, in fact, in the government, all the let me just say, like on the road sector, the concessioning that have been tried over the years, none of them has succeeded. You all know about the Lagos-Ibadan Road and so on. And the second Niger Bridge, you know, and so on. Because it's not bankable in terms of short-term finance. It's bankable in terms of long-term finance. We are talking of 25 years, 30 years upwards. And again, okay, so I've been advised that another session is starting. Let me just just round up that these are, so if you, for foreign investors, which we're encouraging to come in, government usually will support them sometimes with sovereign guarantees to make this work. So these are some of the challenges that we need, more discussions are needed in this area. Let me stop so far for time. Thank you. We appreciate this session, very useful session, and I thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Sorry, there's never enough time. I thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you very much for contributing. So I think we've officially closed the session. All the feedback will be sent to where it needs to go. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the deliberations.